This video is essentially part 2 of a video I did entitled Will a Red Heifer Cause Armageddon, where I explain the background of the Red Heifer prophecy, how it is understood by Jews, Christians, and Muslims, and then I explain how current events are being shaped by this prophecy, including how Israel now has 4 qualifying red heifers and a looming threat of the 10th sacrifice. If you didn't see that video, I would strongly encourage you to watch that first, otherwise this video will make little sense. I'll put the link here for that video. I spoke about the biblical history of the red heifer sacrifice and what it means and how rare it is, happening only 9 times in the past 3,300 years, and how it is tied to the building of the third temple in Jerusalem, and how that causes a major conflict between Jews and Muslims, all while Christians are extremely interested as well because many believe it is tied to the coming of the Messiah. I spoke about the rarity of the red heifers that meet all of the requirements and how 5 were identified in Texas and moved to Israel, where 4 remained qualified after 1 was disqualified after growing a wrong-colored hair. I mentioned that the Temple Institute in Israel is the organization that is pushing towards performing the ritual and had indicated that they were hoping to perform the ritual prior to Passover 2024, which begins April 22nd. So with the fast approach of Passover, let me give you the latest regarding the red heifer sacrifice. Several news outlets have shown this photo indicating that it is a massive altar already built for the ritual. While there are very few details about this, it appears that this has been built, but not on the Mount of Olives where the ritual needs to take place. So some believe this has been erected so the rabbi can practice the ceremony, but it is not the one that will be used. As far as I can tell, there has not yet been an altar built on the Mount of Olives, where land was purchased in 2011 for this very purpose. A Christian preacher working to bring forth the temple prophecy has said that the red heifers are being raised in Shiloh and have come of sacrificial age. If you recall from my last video, they need to be at least in their 3rd year. The Christian preacher is Michael Samuel Smith, and in a video he posted in January, it says, quote, "It is still our opinion the first successful red heifer sacrifice will take place in the spring of 2024, around the Passover to Pentecost timeframe." Prior to this quote, we had only heard from the Temple Institute that they had planned on it being prior to Passover, but that time period may have been extended slightly as Passover begins April 22nd and Pentecost is May 19th. I find it is interesting that it is phrased that way, as Passover is a Jewish holiday and Pentecost is a Christian holiday. We do know that Christian groups are working with Jews to bring about the red heifer sacrifice, but I would find it interesting if the Jews are actually selecting a date that can be celebrated by both Jews and Christians. I don't want to speculate too much around this, but it would seem like a really good strategy to get the Christian world on the side of the Jews if they perform the ritual, as it is essentially a call for the Jews to take control of the Temple Mount, and perhaps even destroy or forcibly move the Muslim sacred sites. Perhaps with Christian support, the Palestinians that have stopped Jews in the past will not feel like they can adequately protect their 3rd most holy site on earth. And it does seem like the Muslims are on high alert. Al Jazeera, the premier Muslim news organization, have done several stories on the red heifer and how the Israeli government is assisting the Temple Institute in their goals. This April 9th article has this picture with the caption, "Red heifers imported from the U.S. feed at a farm in Hamadia, Israel, near the northern city of Beishan." And they aren't wrong. On the Temple Institute's own Wikipedia page, it says that the Israeli government has also provided funding, as well as New York billionaire Henry Suica. Muslims have called out that the 5 imported cows from the United States were brought in illegally, as livestock isn't allowed from the United States. To get around this, apparently they listed the heifers as quote-unquote pets. According to Jerusalem nonprofit Ir Amim, this was done with the assistance and approval of the Israeli government in partnership with the Temple Institute and Bona Israel, an evangelical organization pushing for the ritual to take place. In that same Al Jazeera article, it says, quote, "There are indications that the temple movement is preparing to sacrifice a red heifer with the support of the Israeli government, calling it a detestable religious myth, and then attempts to call Palestinian Muslims to action by saying, quote, defending Al-Aqsa is an important mission for Palestinian Muslims, worshippers, and armed fighters alike. So effectively, some Jews believe that sacrificing the red heifer will be a call to action for Jews to take the Temple Mount under their control and evict the Muslims from their holy site, and then build the 3rd temple, while Palestinian Muslims are being encouraged to protect it when that happens. Will the sacrifice of the red heifer be enough to mobilize Israeli control over the Temple Mount, move the Muslims out, and be able to maintain control long enough to build their temple? Let's not forget that there are Jewish extremist groups that have attempted to take control of the Temple Mount many times and have failed. But three things are different this time than attempts in the past to claim the Temple Mount. First, the number of Jews has been increasing in the region faster than non-Jews. Meanwhile, Palestinian-controlled lands have over the past 70 years or so become increasingly Israeli, giving more power and control in the region to the Israelis. Second, many now believe the Red Heifer prophecy, and this is the first time in 2,000 years a qualifying red heifer is available for sacrifice. Many Jews believe the third temple must be built prior to the coming of their Messiah, and that first requires the sacrifice of a qualifying red heifer. Third, the availability of the red heifer is a result of Christian partnerships and funding, and many Christians are supporting the Jews and their interest in Jerusalem and specifically reclaiming the Temple Mount and the building of the third temple, as many Christians believe it must be built prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. So perhaps with the support of Christians, Jews may be able to take control of the Temple Mount and maintain that control to build a temple. All of that being said, the Temple Institute has been very quiet recently regarding the sacrifice of the red heifer. In prior videos, they have said they plan to, quote, invite everyone, but no specific date has been set, and we are now days away from the date they have been talking about for years. One reason that may be is that the Israeli government may not want to incite problems at this time. When I mentioned earlier that the Israeli government had partially funded the Temple Institute, remember that investments in funding organizations is not just to support them, but sometimes to control them. Perhaps the Israeli government is using their influence to put the ritual off. And while nothing in Scripture or prophecy states that the red heifer sacrifice has to be done at any particular time of the year, if the heifers are in their third year now, the clock is ticking to perform the ceremony before the 4 remaining red heifers become disqualified, which often happens due to age and growing discolored hairs, which could happen any time. So perhaps it will be prior to Passover in a few days, or between Passover and Pentecost, like some Christians believe. Maybe they will wait a full year while these red heifers still qualify. And perhaps they may not do it at all with these 4 red heifers and have to wait into the future when another qualifying red heifer is found. For those that want to get more background and information on this topic and see the people involved in this, which I spoke about earlier, click on the card above to watch this video, which did a good job summarizing the situation, although it is over a year old and doesn't have any updates on the specific dates or plans. Thanks for watching.